Part 23, Chapter 12. The 4 surviving members of the Nostromo's crew reassembled in the mess. It was no longer cramped, confining. It had acquired a spaciousness the 4 loathed, and held memories they struggled to put aside. Parker held 2 flamethrowers, dumped one onto the bare tabletop. Ripley gazed sadly at him. Where was it? We just found it lying there, on the floor of the mixing chamber below the walkway. The engineer said dully. No sign of him. No blood. Nothing. What about the alien? The same. Nothing. Only a hole torn through the central cooling complex. Right through the metal. I didn't think it was that strong. None of us did. Dallas didn't either. We've been 2 steps behind this creature since we first brought the hand stage on board. That's got to change. From now on, we assume it's capable of anything, including invisibility. No known creature is a natural invisible. Ash insisted. She glared back at him. No known creature can peel through 3-centimeter thick ship plating either. Ash offered no response to that. It's about time we all realized what we're up against. There was silence in the mess. Ripley, this puts you in command. Parker looked straight at her. It's okay with me. Okay. She studied him, but both his words and his attitude were devoid of sarcasm. For once, he dropped his omnipresent bullshit. What now, Ripley? She asked herself. 3 faces watched hers expectantly, waited for instructions. She searched her mind frantically for brilliance, found only uncertainty, fear, and confusion. Precisely the same feelings her companions were no doubt experiencing. She began to understand Dallas a little better. And now it didn't matter. That's settled then. Unless someone's got a better idea about how to deal with this alien, we'll proceed with the same plan as before. And wind up the same way? Lambert shook her head. No, thanks. You've got a better idea then? Yes. Abandon ship. Take the shuttlecraft and get the hell out of here. Take our chances on making Earth orbit or getting picked up. Once we get back in well-traveled space, someone's bound to hear our SOS. Ash spoke softly, words better left unsaid. Lambert had forced them out of him now. You are forgetting something. Dallas and Brett may not be dead. It's a ghastly probability, I'll grant you, but it's not a certainty. We can't abandon ship until we're sure, one way or the other. Ash is right, agreed Ripley. We've got to give it another try. We know it's using the air shafts. Let's take it level by level. This time we'll laser seal every bulkhead and vent behind us until we corner it. I'll go along with that. Parker glanced at Lambert. She said nothing, looking downcast. How are the weapons? Ripley asked him. The engineer took a moment to check levels and feed lines on the flamethrowers. The lines and nozzles are still plenty clean. From what I can see, they're working fine. He gestured at Dallas's incinerator on the table. We could use more fuel for that one. He turned somber. A fair amount has been used. Then you better go get some to replace it. Ash, you go with him. Parker looked at the science officer. His expression was unreadable. I can manage. Ash nodded. The engineer cradled his own weapon, turned and left. The rest of them stood morosely around the table, awaiting Parker's return. Unable to stand the silence, Ripley turned to face the science officer. Any other thoughts? Fresh ideas, suggestions, hints? From you or Mother? He shrugged, looked apologetic. Nothing new. Still collating information. She stared hard at him. I can't believe that. Are you telling me that with everything we've got on board this ship in the way of recorded information, we can't come up with something better to use against this thing? That's the way it looks, doesn't it? Keep in mind, this is not your average, predictable feral we're dealing with. You said yourself it might be capable of anything. It possesses a certain amount of mental ammunition, at least as much as a dog, and probably more than a chimpanzee. It has also demonstrated an ability to learn. As a complete stranger to the Nostromo, it has succeeded in quickly learning how to travel about the ship largely undetected. It is swift, powerful, and cunning. A predator the likes of which we've never encountered before. It is not so surprising our efforts to deal with it have met with failure. You sound like you're ready to give up. I am only restating the obvious. This is a modern, well-equipped ship, able to travel through hyperspace and execute a variety of complex functions. You're telling me that all its resources are inadequate to cope with a single large animal. I'm sorry, Captain. I've given you my evaluation of the situation as I see it. Wishing otherwise will not alter facts. A man with a gun may hunt a tiger during the day with some expectation of success. Turn out his light, put the man in the jungle at night, surround him with the unknown, and all his primitive fears return. Advantage to the tiger. We are operating in the darkness of ignorance. Very poetic, but not very useful. I'm sorry. He did not appear to care one way or the other. What do you want me to do? Try and alter some of those facts you're so positive about. Go back to Mother, she ordered him, and keep asking questions until you get some better answers. All right, I'll try, though I don't know what you expect. Mother can't hide information. Try different questions. If you'll remember, I had some luck working through ECIU, the distress signal that wasn't. I remember. Ash regarded her with respect. Maybe you're right. He left. Lambert had taken a seat. Ripley moved and sat down next to her. Try to hang on. You know Dallas would have done the same for us. No way he would have left the ship without making sure or not that we were alive. Lambert didn't look mollified. All I know is that you're asking us to stay and get picked off one by one. I promise you, if it looks like it won't work out, I'll bail us out of here fast. I'll be the first one on the boat. She had a sudden thought. It was a peculiar one, oddly out of place and yet strangely relevant in some inexplicable way to all her present concerns. She glanced over at Lambert. Her companion had to answer truthfully, or there'd be no point in asking the question. She decided that while Lambert might be queasy where other matters were involved, on this particular subject, Ripley could trust her reply. Of course, an answer one way or another probably wouldn't mean a thing. It was just a perverse little mind bubble that would grow and continue to dominate her thoughts until she popped it. No real meaning. Lambert, did you ever sleep with Ash? No. Her reply was immediate, leaving no room for hesitation or second thoughts. What about you? No. Both went quiet for a few minutes before Lambert spoke up voluntarily. I never got the impression, she said casually, he was particularly interested. That was the end of it as far as the navigator was concerned. It was almost the end of it as far as Ripley was concerned. She could not have said why she continued to mull over the thought, but it hung maddeningly in her mind, tormenting her, and for her life's blood, she couldn't imagine why. Parker checked the level on the first methane cylinder, made sure the bottle of highly compressed gas was full. He did the same with a second, resting nearby. Then he hefted the two heavy containers and started back up the companionway. It was as lonely on B deck as it had been below. The sooner he rejoined the others, the better he'd feel. In fact, he wished now that he'd let Ash accompany him. He'd been an idiot to run off for the cylinders by himself. Everyone who'd been taken by the alien had been alone. He tried to jog a little faster, despite the awkward weight of the bottles. He turned a bend in the corridor, stopped, nearly dropping one of the containers. Ahead lay the main airlock. Beyond it, but not far beyond, something had moved. Or had it? It was time for imagining things, and he blinked, trying to clear mind and eyes. He'd almost started ahead again when the shadow movement was repeated. There was a vague suggestion of something tall and heavy. Looking around, he located one of the ubiquitous wall comms. Ripley and Lambert should still be on the bridge. He thumbed the switch beneath the grid. Something indecipherable drifted out from the speaker set in Ripley's console. At first, she thought it was only localized static, then decided she recognized a word or two. Ripley here. Keep it down, the engineer whispered urgently into the pickup. Ahead of him, the movement in the corridor had suddenly ceased. If the creature had heard him. I can't hear you. Ripley exchanged a puzzled look with Lambert, who looked blank. But when she spoke into her pickup again, she kept her voice down as requested. Repeat. Why the need for quiet? The alien. Parker whispered it, not daring to raise his voice. It's outside the starboard lock. Yes, right now. Open the door slowly. When I give the word, close it fast and blow the outer hatch. Are you sure? He interrupted her quickly. I tell you, we've got it. Just do as I tell you. He forced himself to calm down. Now open it slowly. Ripley hesitated, started to say something, then saw Lambert nodding vigorously. If Parker was wrong, they had nothing to lose but a minuscule amount of air. If he knew what he was doing, on the other hand. She threw a switch. Below, Parker tried to become part of the corridor wall as a low whine sounded. The inner airlock door moved aside. The creature came out of the shadows and moved towards it. Several lights were flashing inside the lock. One was an especially bright emerald green. The alien regarded it with interest, moved to stand on the threshold of the lock. Come on, damn you, the engineer thought frantically. Look at the pretty green light. That's right. Wouldn't you like to have the pretty green light all to yourself? Sure you would. Just step inside and take the beautiful greenness. Just a couple of steps inside and it can be yours forever. Just a couple of steps. God, just a couple of steps. Fascinated by the steadily pulsing indicator, the alien stepped into the lock. It was completely inside. Not by much, but who could tell when it might suddenly grow bored or suspicious. Now! He husked into the pickup. Now! Ripley prepared to throw the emergency close. Her hand was halfway to the toggle when the Nostromo's emergency klaxon wailed for attention. She and Lambert froze. Each looked to the other, saw only her own personal shock mirrored in her companion's face. Ripley threw the toggle over. The alien heard the klaxon too. Muscles contracted and it sprang backward, clearing the threshold of the lock in a single incredible leap. The hatch door slammed shut, just a fraction faster. One appendage was pinned between wall and door. Liquid boiled out of the crushed member. The alien made a noise like a moan or bellow made underwater. It wrenched itself backward, leaving the trapped limb pinned between metal. Then it turned and rushed down the corridor, blind with pain, hardly seeing the paralyzed engineer as it lifted and threw him aside, before vanishing around the nearest corner. Above the crumpled Parker, a green light was flashing, and the words, "Inner hatch closed," showed on a readout. The metal of the lock continued to bubble and melt as the outer hatch swung open. A puff of frozen air appeared outside the lock as the atmosphere that had been contained within rushed into space. "Parker!" Ripley spoke anxiously into the pickup, jabbed a switch, adjusted a slide. "Parker, what's happening down there?" Her attention was caught by a green light winking steadily on her console. "What's going on?" Lambert leaned out of her seat. "Did it work?" "I'm not sure. The inner hatch is sealed and the outer hatch has been popped." "That should do it. But what about Parker?" "I don't know. I can't get a response out of him. If it worked, he should be screaming fit to bust the speakers." She made a decision. "I'm going down to see. Take over." She slipped out of her chair, raced for B corridor. She nearly fell a couple of times. Once she stumbled into a bulkhead and nearly knocked herself out. Somehow she kept her balance and staggered on. The alien was not uppermost in her mind. It was Parker, another human being. A rare commodity on board the Nostromo now. She raced down the companionway onto B corridor, headed up towards the airlock. It was empty, except for a limp form sprawled across the deck. Parker. She bent over him. He was groggy and half-conscious. "What happened? You look like hell, did—" The engineer was trying to form words, had to settle for gesturing feebly towards the airlock. Ripley shut up, looked in the indicated direction, saw the bubbling hole in the lock door. The outer hatch was still open, ostensibly after blowing the alien out into nothingness. She started to rise. The acid ate completely through. There was a bang of departing air, and a small hurricane enveloped them. Air screamed as it was sucked into vacuum. A flashing red sign appeared in several recesses in the corridor walls. Critical depressurization.